Right, so Robert Jenrick has gone. Honest Bob, as I like to call him, because you can forget him trying to help a billionaire former newspaper proprietor and mucky magnate from trying to avoid millions in property tax when he was in charge of housing and lying through his teeth about it afterwards. It unfortunately didn't preclude him from being handed the immigration brief later on in his career, though, did it? Where he's become best known for wanting to scare the living daylights out of asylum seeker children by ensuring there were no friendly faces on the walls to greet them, ensuring scared kiddies stayed as scared as possible, like it would serve as a deterrent. This guy has kids himself. God knows what it must be like to have him as your father, though. It was a performative, foul example of an unnecessarily mean person, and the reason he's quit now is basically because Rishi Sunak, a man set on binning human rights, isn't mean enough for him. But it's not the whole story, because I reckon there's a bit more to it than that. Right, so Robert Jenrick has quit the government. Hooray! We're not going to miss him, are we? Horrible little man. Quit the immigration brief because the Tory immigration plans, which still include deporting people to Rwanda, let's not forget that, simply aren't mean enough or nasty enough for him anymore. This is a guy who for ages has been best remembered for helping a very rich man dodge his dues over a housing development, until he had one of those hold my beer moments when it came to picking on children instead, and will instead be remembered best for being the guy who demanded cartoon murals in detention centres be painted over to make them as scary and as uninviting as possible. This needlessly cruel, pointless individual, this little scrote, will not be missed one iota by those of us with an ounce of empathy in our hearts. This, of course, though, came hot on the heels of Suella Braverman reading out a resignation speech in the Commons, which was, well, it was just basically an attack on Sunak, and made all the more farcical because he sacked her. She didn't resign at all. She's already published a resignation letter, and now she had to do this on top of it. It's all me, isn't it? She's like the Tory version of Jess Phillips at this point. It was just one more example of Cruella making things all about her. But Jenrick's resignation followed. There are more noises coming from the Braverman and Jenrick wing of the Tory party, making it sound like something is afoot, and actually has nothing to do with changes in immigration policy. Those changes basically involve doing what Braverman and Jenrick wanted all along, or so they said, so they gave the impression of. Jenrick came out selling this plan, then just 24 hours later resigns over it. And that was Sunak basically saying he's prepared to break international law to deport people to Rwanda. Was this not what they wanted? Was this not what Suella had been dreaming of, having been defeated by the Supreme Court finally on the legality of those deportation flights? Sunak simply said, well, we'll legislate to make Rwanda a safe country regardless of the Supreme Court ruling. That it isn't. A horrible human rights record, a record of abusing and even killing asylum seekers, war brewing on two of its borders which nobody ever seems to mention. It blatantly is not safe. So writing a new law, a rubbish law, a rancid law that gets around that court ruling is nothing short of an abuse of executive power. No doubt the Court of Human Rights would take a dim view of such a law, ruling it illegal, and then it'll all be about bidding our human rights to get around that one, with what consequences for all of the rest of us. To give you an example of just how far things have gone now, that still isn't far enough for Jenrick, even Rwanda are now getting cold feet over this deportation deal. They are now saying that they won't accept any agreement with the UK that breaks international law, even if Sunak might be happy to become some kind of despotic pariah world leader in order to deliver on it, which must be a global first in a man who is as utterly spineless ordinarily as he is. Jenrick's resignation letter is a load of gumph. Sometimes these letters, they have a bit of a zinger in them, worth a mention, but this is two sides of A4 of waffle. And of course, how can it not be when he was selling a deal 24 hours before he resigned over that same deal? Why did he quit then? Because if you believe it is this deal that's prompted it, you are dafter than you look. Jenrick, just like Braverman and other members of the ERG hard-right bratshit brigade of the Tory party, who wanted the toughest of tough sanctions on asylum seekers to stop the boats, are now all not backing it because it doesn't go far enough for them. What do you want to stop the boats now? Do you want to sink them to boats? For Rwanda, it goes too far. Sunak can't win then. It's not hard enough for his own party. It's too hard for Rwanda. What can he do? But then Jenrick's actions and those of others are all about him now. Jenrick has jumped ship because the game's up. Sunak cannot deliver a win come the general election. The writing's on the wall. Polling is dire, fresh off the back of what was reportedly an awful 1922 committee meeting of backbench Tory MPs, many of whom are speculating about letters of no confidence going in against Sunak at this point. And certainly Sunak is getting more desperate, bleating this morning at his emergency press conference that sending refugees to Rwanda is the only way to preserve the British sense of fair play, that it is the right thing to do to arbitrarily declare Rwanda safe when it isn't, whilst also claiming he saved the economy, cut taxes and cut immigration, when none of that is true either. He's flailing around, sounding ever more fascistic. And of course he says the real question on whether this gets passed is whether the Labour Party will support it. Now you might be thinking, well, that's just a political swipe at Starmer, isn't it? That's just the normal way these things work in our politics. But actually, it's conceivable, despite his majority, he might actually need some Labour votes to get it passed. Assuming Starmer throws Sunak under the bus on this, though, which I could well believe he would, even I can't believe Starmer could be quite stupid enough to back this to save Sunak. Therefore, Sunak's asylum plan is probably going to fail. It will fall. And that could be fatal for him and his government. And the mood music from Jenrick and Braverman might be a sign that that is the actual intention now. More than voting through these deportation plans that they now say are not strong enough, they're going to try and topple Sunak instead and maybe replace him with yet another unelected Tory leader, possibly one of their own faction. But I doubt they have the numbers for that. They won't get the support of more moderate Tories. More likely is they are reading the writing on the wall, want Sunak done in before he does any more damage to the party's polling, before any more seats look likely to be lost, and Sunak's last gasp swipe at such people in his party would be to just trigger a general election and press that emergency big red button earlier than we are perhaps expecting. Being on the back benches again, Jenrick and Braverman would then be positioned for a likely shadow cabinet post under a new leader after the election, the Tories virtually certain to lose it after all, and lose heavily. And this is why Jenrick has quit, actually, I think. They've finally decided Sunak's done for. They don't want to be tied to the sinking administration. They're thinking of their own career prospects now, certain to be in opposition, but positioned so that if they keep their seats, I'd imagine they'd be fairly sure of themselves on that, rightly or wrongly, they'd be amongst the front of the queue for promotion based on experience, and also in the hope they elect a mad, bad, ultra-right-winger to their tastes to lead them too. The Rwanda bill is illegal on human rights grounds anyway. It will fail, but if it goes to the ECHR, Sunak could at least then blame human rights. If his own party let it be defeated, though, that'll be tantamount to a confidence vote in him. And right now, I wouldn't like to bet on Sunak surviving such a circumstance if the ERG can manage to convince a few more backbenchers that Sunak is finished. What Sunak continues to fail to realise, and what Braverman and Jenrick have twigged to, I think, is that no matter which way this goes, the public are sick of them all anyway. Starmer is almost certain to be the next Prime Minister, depressingly, save moves against him to lose his seat coming to fruition. Labour certainly forming the next government, though. This is every Tory for themselves now. Buy some popcorn. I think things are going to get very rough very soon for Rishi Sunak, and nobody can say he doesn't deserve it. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this video useful. Please like, share and subscribe if you did. More content out daily. Please do have your say on this story in the comments below and be part of the conversation. Meanwhile, here's a video recommendation. It's well that Braverman's Rwanda plans got destroyed all the way back in August, so the fact this is still stringing on and on and on and is still being argued over even now really does show how little they have left to talk about, to offer us, how little ground they've made on this issue, except this ongoing culture war against people fleeing real and proper wars. And more, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.